So Greg, now we're going to talk about a few passages altogether that make up our 23 texts G, H, I, J, and K.
Yes, and what I'll do is I'll indicate what the passage is in each case. So that when it comes to text G, which we've already talked about, but I want to do a different point of emphasis here. It's Phaedo 85b in the so-called Stephanus page numbering. And we're returning here to the metaphor of swans as something to compare Socrates to. Mm-hmm. And this time I'm emphasizing not so much the special quality of swans in signaling what the meaning of the god Apollo is. And in this case, they signal it with the beauty of their song, but rather why their swan song is something so comparable to what Socrates is doing, having his last dialogue as a living person, and then leaving further dialogue to his successors, his students, his want-to-be students. And I want to emphasize how the happy state of mind that Socrates has, assuming that swans are happy when they sing their swan song, because they're going to be reunited with Apollo, is that Socrates too will be reunited with Apollo in another life. And in that situation, it's implied that he will be continuing dialogues. Mm-hmm. That's why he wants people whom he leaves behind to keep speaking and asking whatever questions you want. He wants the dialogue to go as long as it can with him so that it can continue beyond his life. Mm-hmm. So I think it makes perfectly good sense metaphorically, and by metaphorically here I mean that Socrates is substituting for the idea of Socratic dialogue, the beautiful song of swans who are about to be reunited with the master of music, Apollo. And by way of this comparison, he can present dialogue as something that will continue forever. And that's why I emphasize you must speak and ask whatever questions you want. Just keep on speaking, keep on asking questions, and even if I can't answer them, somebody will. Mm-hmm. Because there's a continuity, and the eternity has to do with the continuity. And the board of 11, I guess, does allow it, because he certainly continues the dialogue till his very last breath. Which brings me to our 23 text H, which is from a work by Plutarch, this 2nd century CE author. Mm-hmm. And this work focuses on a very important Athenian statesman, Nikias, who really understood the myth-ritual complex of Delos, something that Plato certainly understands, and Plato's Socrates certainly understood. And since Plutarch has no philosophical agenda, I thought it was very important for people to understand just exactly what the ritual is that the Athenian state undertakes on a yearly basis when they send the ship of state to the island of Apollo, to the sacred island of Apollo, and how that whole journey is called a theōriā, which is such an important word for us as we consider Plato's Socrates and models of heroes in hour 23. The sacred voyage has to be just right in order for the community to be successful. And I like the fact that the climax of this sacred voyage is a song and dance that is performed by representatives of the city of Athens in honor of the god Apollo. So it's a kind of hymn to Apollo. And of course we know from Plato's Phaedo that while this very important ritual is going on, in the ritual world you cannot pollute it by having, for example, the execution of a prisoner of the state to take place. That would pollute the whole process. So while the theōriā is going on, while the sacred voyage is going on, as described beautifully here by Plutarch, and as certainly executed by a great statesman like Nikias. That said, this blueprint for the ritual means that not only is there a theōriā going on while Socrates is having a dialogue with his followers, but the dialogue that's happening in prison is coextensive with the sacred voyage that the Athenian state has undertaken. So the two go so closely together that we finally understand how, for Plato, a theōriā is not only this important myth ritual exercise in renewing the community and making the society be reborn year after year after year, but that it's also Socrates' last chance to have a dialogue. And this coextensiveness of the ritual of the Athenian state and the dialogue of Socrates, which is going to be his last dialogue while alive, will add up to a new understanding of what theōriā is, that it's no longer just a journey of a soul. It's theory the way we think of theory, the way we think of theorizing, which is what we do when we engage in dialogue. With that in mind, I look at our 23 text I, which is from Euripides Herakles, and it's an incidental reference to the Delian maidens and to Delos and to the singing and dancing that goes on at the sacred island of Apollo. But the reason I focus on this particular passage here is how the song that is sung for Apollo is actually compared directly here to the song of swans as the sacred birds of Apollo. So this gives special meaning to the choice that Socrates makes in comparing himself, Socrates, as the temple slave of Apollo, to swans, who are the sacred birds of Apollo. It's the Delian connection. And with that said, I go back to our 23 text J, which is really the same old passage that I keep coming back to, Plato's Phaedo 85b, and how, just to repeat, you must speak and ask whatever questions you want in that context of the Delian connection. And I couldn't resist throwing into this equation the beautiful words of Franz von Schober, who was a librettist for Franz Schubert. And in our 23 text K, I give you the German text and then my attempt at a translation of this beautiful work. The German title is An die Musik, meaning to music. And the part that maybe I like the best is how music itself is greeted as if it were a goddess, as if, may I say it this way, she were a goddess. And music is addressed just as Apollo is addressed by Socrates. I'm not saying there is a direct, deliberate connection, but it's certainly something that plays on the same theme that Socrates plays on, which is the sacredness of Apollo's musike, music, or as far as Plato is concerned, the highest form of art, which is the music of philosophy itself.